Welcome to this gentle journey through the world of Pokemon. Before we begin, let me know in the comments where you are watching from tonight. Long before challengers ever stepped into his electric-filled arena, Lieutenant Serge was already one of the most mysterious figures in Kanto. Known as the Lightning American in original game material, his identity carried an air of international presence, something rarely seen among early gym leaders. His very title, Lieutenant, implied a military past, sparking decades of speculation about which battles he may have fought, where he served, and what shaped his hardened worldview. For many players, this made him stand apart, not simply a type specialist, but a character with scars of a larger history behind him. His gym reflected this personality with raw precision. The arena in Vermilion City was not decorated with natural themes or cultural nods like other gyms. Instead, it was designed as a puzzle of electric gates and switches, forcing trainers to endure frustration before even reaching the leader himself. This mechanical, almost militaristic approach mirrored his background, teaching persistence and discipline. For players encountering this gym in the earliest games, it became a point of both challenge and curiosity, as the obstacles were unlike anything faced up to that point. The centerpiece of his battle was Raichu. In the original red and blue versions, this fully evolved electric type represented a spike in difficulty, especially for those who had chosen Squirtle or had not yet caught a ground type to nullify electric attacks. Its speed and thunderbolt attack were overwhelming, and combined with the puzzle just to reach it, Raichu created a wall many first-time players never forgot. In the anime, the battle between his Raichu and Ash's Pikachu only amplified this impression, cementing him as an iconic hurdle in Pokemon culture. Obscure details deepen this impression of toughness. His Japanese dialogue referenced him as having saved his life with electric Pokemon during the war. While localized versions softened this, the undertone remained this was a leader forged by conflict. No other gym leader carried such overt ties to real-world military service, making him feel grounded and uniquely intimidating. Fans have long debated which war this referred to, with interpretations ranging from a fictional Pokemon conflict to allegories of modern battles. The lack of clarity only fueled his mystique. His personality also stood out as one of brash arrogance, calling challengers baby in the anime and mocking inexperienced trainers. Yet beneath that tough exterior, he symbolized survival. By emphasizing electric types, he aligned himself with themes of raw power, instant strikes, and technological dominance. Electricity itself was a modern energy compared to traditional elements like water, grass, or rock. In this way, his team reflected progress and adaptation, reinforcing the notion that he was both a soldier and a survivor of a new age. In later games, his influence stretched further. In Heart Gold and Soul Silver, players could rematch him at higher levels, where his team had expanded to include more advanced electric strategies. This continuity showed that even after years, Lieutenant Serge had not faded into obscurity. His battle style matured, representing his experience not just as a soldier, but as a veteran trainer. The fact that his presence persisted across generations gave him a legacy rivaled by few other early leaders. Obscure trivia reveals Tiz Gym's switch puzzle is famously trial and error and tests patience more than logic, making it feel like a stern checkpoint that fits his no-nonsense persona, unlike the logic or pattern puzzles in other gyms. Developers later admitted that it was meant to be one of the most trial and error heavy obstacles in the early series, reinforcing his character as someone who pushed trainers to their limits. In many ways, the puzzle itself told his story, as much as his Raichu did, rigid, uncompromising, and demanding perseverance. The cultural impact of Lieutenant Serge cannot be overstated. Among gym leaders, he was one of the earliest to be portrayed with such distinct personality and backstory. His association with war, electricity, and American identity made him stand out in a Japanese-created world. The anime only amplified this, as his rough voice, commanding presence, and dramatic battle against Ash turned him into a fan favorite. Even decades later, his name still sparks recognition, proof that his role resonated far beyond a single city in Kanto. In competitive discussions, Raichu rarely dominated top-tier play, but its association with Lieutenant Serge kept it culturally significant. Fans often debated whether the leader should have used Pikachu instead, or if the choice of Raichu symbolized maturity and discipline compared to youthful beginnings. This debate reflected broader themes of growth and evolution, with Raichu representing the hardened veteran to Pikachu's underdog hero. Ultimately, Lieutenant Serge embodied a unique type of lore, grounded, gritty, and human. Where other leaders felt like stylized masters of a theme, he felt like a survivor, with history etched into his very identity. His gym taught perseverance, his team punished the unprepared, and his words hinted at worlds of conflict beyond the game's scope. For players encountering him for the first time, he was more than just a battle. He was a glimpse into a side of the Pokémon world that was harsher, darker, and profoundly intriguing. Among the earliest figures in the Pokémon world to capture widespread recognition was Misty, the water-type specialist of Cerulean City. Her position as the second gym leader in Kanto placed her early in a trainer's journey, but her influence extended far beyond her battle. Through the games, anime, and even cultural references, she became a symbol of strength, growth, and the unique challenges that water Pokémon posed to new adventurers. Her gym in Cerulean was one of the first to highlight water as more than just a background element. The layout resembled a swimming pool where trainers navigated across platforms surrounded by water. This design was no accident. It reinforced her identity as a swimmer and her bond with aquatic creatures. For many players, this gym felt more alive and dynamic than Brock's rocky cavern, giving the impression that each leader was not only a test, but a personality embodied in architecture. The centerpiece of her team in the earliest games was Starmie. This star-shaped creature carried a reputation for being deceptively difficult to defeat, particularly in Red and Blue, where its speed and access to powerful water moves overwhelmed many underleveled teams. Its dual typing also provided unexpected resistance, forcing trainers to think beyond brute force. Facing Starmie so early created a sense of intimidation, teaching players the importance of preparation and balance in their teams. Misty's portrayal in the anime catapulted her into global popularity. As one of Ash's traveling companions in the original series, she was given far more development than most other gym leaders. Her fiery personality contrasted with her chosen water type, creating a balance of temper and calm. Episodes often emphasized her bond with Pokémon, her frustrations, and her dreams of becoming a water Pokémon master. For millions of viewers, Misty became not only a character to battle, but a fully realized person with goals and emotions. Obscure trivia highlights that her original Japanese name, Kasumi, means mist, reflecting her association with water and her subtle, hidden depth. Localization retained this theme while making it approachable to Western audiences. Few early characters managed to carry their cultural inspiration so seamlessly across languages. Her influence in later games grew through rematches and cameos, In gold, silver, and crystal, as well as their remakes, she reappeared as an older, more experienced trainer. Her team expanded, her demeanor matured, and her continued pursuit of mastery showed the passage of time in the Pokemon world. This continuity reinforced the idea that gym leaders were not static obstacles, but evolving characters with lives beyond the player's first encounter. In terms of competitive history, water types were always abundant, and Starmie carved out a unique niche thanks to its speed and versatility. It could serve as a rapid spinner, clearing hazards, while also threatening opponents with a wide move pool. Its association with Misty lent it cultural weight, as players often connected their strategic choices to memories of their first difficult battle in Cerulean. The fact that her ace was viable, even in competitive tiers, underscored her impact on both casual and serious play. Misty also represented one of the first female gym leaders, and her presence carried significance in shaping the diversity of trainers within the franchise. While Brock embodied the stoic and reliable type, she balanced the early Kanto journey by providing a fiery yet compassionate counterpart. This contrast symbolized the variety of leaders a trainer would meet, reinforcing that Pokemon mastery came in many forms, not just through brute strength. The cultural impact of Misty extended far beyond the games. In the anime, she became a central figure for multiple seasons, her relationships with Ash and Brock forming the foundation of countless storylines. Episodes such as those involving her Togepi highlighted her nurturing side, while her heated arguments with Ash showed her stubbornness and passion. This complexity endeared her to fans and made her one of the most iconic female characters in the series. Obscure details about her gym puzzle reveal that in later generations, the Cerulean gym evolved slightly in its design to better showcase water. In remakes, additional trainers and layout adjustments emphasized the aquatic theme even more, reminding players that her identity was always tied to this element. The persistence of water throughout her career reflected not only her type specialty, but also her personality, adaptable, ever-present, and capable of both calm and fury. Her eventual departure from the main cast of the anime only increased her legend. Fans debated whether she should have stayed, and her occasional returns sparked excitement, reinforcing her status as an enduring icon. She was not simply another gym leader, she was part of the core memory of the franchise's beginnings. Another fascinating aspect of Misty's identity was her dream of becoming a water Pokemon master. Unlike the more generic titles of Champion or Elite Four, this role emphasized specialization. It raised questions about what mastery truly meant. Was it about winning battles, forming deeper bonds, or understanding the nature of water itself? The ambiguity of her goal allowed fans to interpret her journey in different ways, enriching her legacy. Thematically, Misty embodied growth and change. Water, as an element, symbolized adaptability, and her character mirrored this symbolism. From the fiery young leader in Kanto to the mature figure in later regions, her evolution represented the potential for trainers themselves to grow over time. She reminded players that beginnings do not define the end, and that mastery comes through experience and persistence. Obscure trivia even extends to her appearance in promotional material. Early concept art showed her with slightly different hairstyles and outfits, emphasizing her sporty nature. Over time, her design shifted subtly, reflecting broader trends in how characters were depicted. These changes did not diminish her core identity, but instead reinforced her relevance across decades. Ultimately, Misty's legacy as a gym leader was one of balance, fiery yet compassionate, competitive yet nurturing, early game yet timeless. Her presence in Cerulean Gym challenged players, her role in the anime endeared her to fans, and her continued growth across generations cemented her as one of the most significant figures in Pokemon history. For those who faced her Starmie for the first time, the memory often lingered long after the battle ended, reminding them that even early challenges can leave lasting impressions. Among all of Kanto's gym leaders, few inspired as much fascination and unease as Sabrina, the psychic-type master of Saffron City, where many leaders embodied their type through outward themes, water gyms as pools, grass gyms as gardens. Sabrina's identity was woven into an aura of mystery and discomfort. She was not merely a trainer, but a figure who blurred the boundaries between human and psychic powers, leaving players to wonder where her abilities ended and her humanity began. Her gym reflected her enigmatic nature. Instead of a straightforward path or environmental puzzle, challengers had to navigate a teleportation maze. This mechanic reinforced the disorienting nature of psychic power, where distance and direction became meaningless. It symbolized the idea that to face Sabrina, one first had to accept disorientation and confusion. Many players found themselves spinning endlessly through the warp tiles, the repetition of the process, creating an almost dreamlike state before the battle even began. The centerpiece of her team in red and blue was Alakazam. Known for its immense special attack and speed, it stood as one of the most dangerous opponents in the early generations. At the time, psychic types had very few counters. The lack of reliable bug or ghost moves made Alakazam overwhelming, often wiping out unprepared teams in seconds. For countless players, this battle marked the point where they realized the Pokemon games could be genuinely punishing. Alakazam was not just a reflection of Sabrina's power, it was the embodiment of the imbalance that defined the first generation's competitive scene. The anime expanded her legend in unsettling ways. In her debut, Sabrina was portrayed as cold, distant, and almost doll-like, reflecting an eerie disconnect from ordinary humans. She communicated through telepathy, controlled objects with her mind, and displayed a chilling sense of detachment. Perhaps most haunting was her doll companion, which symbolized both her psychic powers and her inability to connect with others on normal terms. The episode left many viewers uneasy, making Sabrina one of the most memorable figures in the series. Obscure trivia reveals that in the original Japanese games, dialogue suggested her powers went beyond simple psychic tricks. She was described as being born with gifts that set her apart from humans, abilities she struggled to control. Localization softened some of these implications, but the undertone remained. Sabrina was more than a trainer, she was something otherworldly. This ambiguity blurred the line between trainer and Pokemon, reinforcing the idea that psychic powers in the Pokemon world were not merely game mechanics, but deeply ingrained abilities. Another obscure detail involves her name. In Japanese, she was called Natsume, which some interpret as a reference to Natsume Soseki, a famous novelist known for psychological themes. Whether deliberate or not, the name carried a literary weight, hinting at a character rooted in thought, perception, and internal struggle. The English localization as Sabrina shifted the tone toward mystical connotations, but both names reinforced her aura of being different, cerebral, and unsettling. In competitive history, Alakazam dominated early play. Its overwhelming stats and limited counters made it a staple in first-generation battles, particularly in the hands of skilled players. Sabrina's association with such a powerful figure further cemented her reputation. While later generations would balance psychic types with new dark and steel resistances, the shadow of her Alakazam lingered, remembered as a symbol of first-generation imbalance. Thematically, Sabrina represented isolation. Her cold demeanor, sparse gym design, and reliance on overwhelming psychic power all suggested a life spent apart from others. Unlike Misty, who was fiery and emotional, or Lieutenant Serge, who was brash and loud, Sabrina rarely showed emotion. This lack of human warmth made her intimidating. Players did not just battle a gym leader, they confronted someone whose very existence challenged their understanding of what it meant to be human. Obscure lore in the anime and manga expanded on her strangeness. In the manga, her role extended into more sinister territory, where she aligned with antagonistic forces and used her powers for manipulation. These portrayals emphasized her as a morally ambiguous figure, blurring the line between ally and enemy. Such depictions contrasted with most gym leaders, who were portrayed as paragons of their type. Sabrina's complexity made her unique. She was not defined by kindness, justice, or tradition, but by enigma and power. Culturally, Sabrina's influence persisted long after her original appearance. She became a touchstone for discussions about psychic powers in the Pokemon world, representing both fascination and fear. Her cold stare, her doll, and her Alakazam became iconic images that shaped how fans perceived psychic types as a whole. While later psychic specialists like Tate and Liza or Olympia carried their own charm, none matched the haunting impact of Sabrina's first portrayal. The music of her gym also contributed to the atmosphere. With its hypnotic tones and looping patterns, it evoked the feeling of being trapped in a dream. Combined with the teleportation maze, the auditory design created an environment where players felt disoriented even before the battle began. This layering of sensory experience reflected the developer's intention to make her gym not just a challenge, but a psychological encounter. Fan theories often speculate about the origin of her powers. Some argue that she may have been experimented on, linking her to broader ideas of human and Pokemon hybridization. Others suggest she represented the natural evolution of psychic ability within humans, a step beyond ordinary existence. While none of these theories are confirmed, their persistence highlights how Sabrina sparked imagination beyond her limited dialogue and appearance. In remakes like Heart Gold and Soul Silver, her portrayal evolved slightly. She appeared more composed, though still distant, and her team adapted to newer mechanics. Yet even in these updates, the aura of mystery remained intact. Players still saw her as the enigmatic figure from Saffron, unchanged by time, a reminder that some legends never lose their power. Ultimately, Sabrina stood as a gym leader unlike any other. Her powers went beyond the battlefield, her personality unsettled rather than reassured, and her connection to psychic types emphasized mystery and imbalance. Facing her was more than a test of strength, it was an encounter with the uncanny, a reminder that the Pokemon world held forces beyond human comprehension. For those who stood before her Alakazam, the memory often lingered long after victory, not just as a battle won, but as a brush with the unknown. Among Kanto's gym leaders, Erika stood apart as a symbol of elegance, serenity, and cultural tradition. Known as the nature-loving princess, she embodied the grace of grass-type Pokemon while tying her identity to themes rarely explored in early games. Where other leaders represented toughness, technology, or mysticism, Erika carried an aura of refinement, blending her battling style with cultural aesthetics that drew heavily from Japanese tradition. Her gym, her appearance, and even her team reflected this deeper connection, making her one of the most distinctive figures of the first generation. Her gym in Celadon City was unique from the moment players entered. Instead of being filled with mechanical puzzles or military-like structures, it resembled a garden, lush with flowers and greenery. Trainers within the gym were exclusively women, creating an atmosphere that felt more like a cultural enclave than a battle arena. This choice was striking. It was one of the earliest examples in the series where a gym felt like a deliberate cultural space, rooted in ideas of community and identity. For many players, Erika's gym was a moment of pause, an environment of calm beauty that contrasted with the bustling metropolis of Celadon outside its doors. The centerpiece of her team was Vileplume, a dual grass and poison type known for its massive, bright flower inspired by the Rafflesia, a parasitic plant famous for its enormous petals and pungent odor. While many trainers struggled earlier in the game with Brock's Onyx or Misty's Starmie, Erika's Vileplume posed a different kind of challenge. Its status-inducing moves and ability to whittle opponents down over time reflected a battle style of patience and attrition. For inexperienced players relying on brute force, this strategy often proved difficult, teaching the importance of adaptability and counterplay. Obscure trivia reveals that Erika's design was inspired by traditional Japanese clothing. Her kimono, long hair, and soft expression all emphasized refinement and connection to heritage. Localization preserved much of this identity, allowing her to remain recognizable across cultures. She became one of the earliest symbols of how Pokemon could incorporate cultural identity into its world building. Unlike Lieutenant Serge, who represented international militarism, or Sabrina, who embodied psychic strangeness, Erika represented a distinctly Japanese aesthetic. Her personality, though not as overtly fiery or intimidating as other leaders, carried weight through subtlety. Dialogue often portrayed her as calm and polite, yet confident in her mastery of grass types. This demeanor made her battle feel less like a confrontation and more like a test of respect. She was not aggressive, but expected challengers to treat her type specialty seriously. In this way, Erika represented the quiet strength of nature, beautiful, calm, yet unyielding when underestimated. In the anime, Erika was portrayed with a similar blend of elegance and humor. Episodes involving her often highlighted her role as a caretaker of perfume and fragrance, further tying her to themes of flowers and serenity. This added dimension reinforced her identity as someone whose life extended beyond battles. She was not simply a gym leader, but also a cultural figure within Celadon, embodying both commerce and tradition. Competitive history shows that grass types often struggled in early formats due to common weaknesses, yet Erika's association with them carried symbolic power. Vileplume itself never dominated the competitive scene, but its presence in her team left an imprint. For players, facing her gym was often the first time they fully grasped the strengths and limitations of grass types. The lesson Erika provided that beauty and patience could be powerful resonated even if her ace was not a top-tier competitor. Obscure details within her gym highlight how Erika's identity contrasted with the surrounding city. Celadon was one of Kanto's largest and busiest hubs, filled with skyscrapers, department stores, and even a game corner tied to underworld crime. Within that urban sprawl, Erika's gym stood as a sanctuary of tradition and nature. This juxtaposition was intentional, reflecting the broader theme of balance in the Pokemon world. Even in a modern metropolis, spaces of quiet heritage endured. Fan interpretations often focus on the symbolism of Erika's gym being composed entirely of women. Some see it as a cultural nod to traditional tea houses or gardens where women upheld rituals of elegance and service. Others view it as a deliberate statement of representation, making space for femininity in a franchise often dominated by male trainers. While the official reason remains unconfirmed, the effect was undeniable. Erika's gym stood out as one of the most distinct spaces in Kanto, shaping how players remembered their journey. Her influence extended into later generations. In Gold, Silver, and Crystal, as well as their remakes, Erika returned as one of the Kanto leaders who could be rematched. Her team evolved to include new grass-type Pokemon, showcasing her growth as a trainer. This continuity emphasized her longevity, suggesting that her calm yet firm mastery of nature endured across years. Unlike some leaders who faded into obscurity, Erika remained a pillar of tradition, as constant as the gardens she loved. Another obscure fact lies in her role in merchandise and promotional art. Erika frequently appeared in official art collections, emphasizing elegance and femininity more than many of her contemporaries. This portrayal reinforced her branding as the embodiment of grace among gym leaders, ensuring her recognition among fans who may not have even played through her gym. Thematically, Erika symbolized harmony between nature and humanity. Her battle style of status moves and gradual victory reflected the slow, persistent strength of natural forces. Her kimono and demeanor connected her to tradition, while her gym within a bustling city showed balance between modern progress and cultural roots. For players, she was a reminder that mastery came not only from power, but also from patience, respect, and heritage. Ultimately, Erika's legacy extended far beyond her Vileplume. She became a symbol of quiet strength, elegance, and cultural continuity within the Pokemon world. Her gym served as a sanctuary amid urban noise. Her personality emphasized tradition without arrogance, and her role in later games preserved her as one of Kanto's most enduring leaders. For those who faced her challenge, the memory often lingered, not for the battle alone, but for the sense of serenity she brought, a reminder that beauty and tradition could shape strength as surely as raw power. Few gym leaders in the history of the Pokemon franchise carried the same weight of mystery and intimidation as Giovanni, the ground-type specialist of Viridian City. Unlike others whose identities were defined solely by their gyms, Giovanni's role extended far beyond the walls of his arena. He was not only a gym leader, but also the criminal mastermind behind Team Rocket, making him the only leader whose double life wove villainy directly into the structure of the journey. His presence blurred the lines between authority and corruption, creating one of the most layered figures in Kanto's mythology. When players first journeyed through Viridian City, early in Red and Blue, the gym was locked, inaccessible, until the end of the adventure. This design choice planted seeds of anticipation as the mysterious final gym loomed throughout the journey. By the time the doors opened, trainers had already faced 7 leaders, tested their skills across diverse environments, and confronted the shadow of Team Rocket multiple times. The revelation that Giovanni himself commanded the final gym created a powerful narrative twist. The villain was also the gatekeeper to the Pokemon League. His ace in the original games was Rhydon, a towering creature with massive strength and a reputation as one of the earliest designed Pokemon in franchise history. Its raw physical power and ground typing reinforced Giovanni's identity as a master of earth and strength. Facing Rhydon after battling through his cadre of other ground types, gave players a sense that the final trial before the Elite Four was not just difficult but symbolic. The villain who sought to exploit Pokemon for power was now the final obstacle standing between the player and their destiny. The anime expanded Giovanni's mystique even further, often depicted in shadow, his face obscured during early appearances. He embodied the archetype of the untouchable boss. For much of the series, he remained a figure of authority, issuing commands to subordinates like Jesse and James. His rare direct appearances emphasized calculation and dominance, and his ownership of Persian became iconic. While the games tied him to ground types, the anime emphasized his identity as a boss more than a trainer, making him a symbol of power itself. Obscure trivia adds further depth to his identity. Early concept material hinted that his position as a gym leader was meant to represent how corruption can infiltrate even the highest levels of authority. He was both a legitimate figure in the league structure and a criminal overlord, blurring the boundary between lawful power and lawlessness. This duality was unique among early leaders, reinforcing the idea that the Pokemon world was not a utopia, but a place where even revered positions could be compromised. In later games such as Gold, Silver, and Crystal, Giovanni's absence became a point of intrigue. His gym stood empty, replaced by a new leader, and dialogue suggested he had vanished after the defeat in Red and Blue. Fans speculated endlessly about his fate. Some believed he wandered in shame, while others theorized he continued to lead Team Rocket from the shadows. This unresolved storyline added to his mystique, ensuring that Giovanni remained a figure of speculation long after his direct role ended. His reappearance in remakes and side games reignited discussions. In Fire Red and Leaf Green, his identity as the final gym leader was preserved, reminding players of the dramatic twist. In Heart Gold and Soul Silver, an event involving Celebi revealed his connection to his son, Silver, adding an entirely new dimension to his character. This revelation tied his villainy to family, suggesting that his legacy extended beyond himself. It was one of the first times the series delved into generational storytelling, demonstrating how the sins of parents could ripple into the lives of their children. Competitive history reflects Giovanni's thematic influence more than direct strategy. Rhydon itself found a niche in early play as a durable physical attacker, though it struggled against water and grass types. Yet its association with Giovanni gave it symbolic significance, reminding players of their final battle in Viridian Gym. His team composition also represented an archetype of ground-type mastery, with creatures that embodied endurance, strength, and brute force. Thematically, Giovanni represented corruption and redemption. After being defeated by the player, his dialogue suggested resignation, as though he had come to terms with his failure. Some versions hinted that he disbanded Team Rocket, though later games complicated this narrative. This ambiguity reflected a deeper truth about Giovanni. He was not a simple villain, but a man whose choices and failures carried consequences that extended beyond his own story. The design of Viridian Gym reinforced his identity. Unlike the serene gardens of Erika or the haunted halls of Sabrina, Giovanni's gym was mechanical and harsh. Conveyor belts forced players into patterns, symbolizing how challengers were at the mercy of systems beyond their control, much like how his organization forced others into obedience. Reaching him required navigating these mechanisms, creating a sense that he was protected not just by his Pokemon, but by a structure of control. Culturally, Giovanni became one of the most enduring villains of the franchise. His double life as gym leader and crime boss inspired countless fan theories, artworks, and stories. He represented the darker side of the Pokemon world: ambition, greed, and the exploitation of creatures for personal gain. At the same time, his resignation hinted at vulnerability, a recognition of defeat that humanized him. This complexity ensured his legacy endured long after newer villains appeared. Fan interpretations often focus on the symbolism of his role as the final gym leader. Some see it as a commentary on corruption within systems of authority, where even respected figures may harbor dark agendas. Others view it as a narrative device meant to shock players into realizing that the world of Pokemon, though whimsical, had shadows lurking beneath its surface. These interpretations highlight how Giovanni elevated the storytelling of the series, adding moral complexity to a game that could have remained simple. Ultimately, Giovanni's presence as both villain and gym leader shaped Kanto's identity. His battle tested players not only in strength but in perseverance, as they confronted the embodiment of corruption standing in the way of their destiny. His legacy persisted through remakes, sequels, and fan discussions, ensuring that his name would forever be associated with both power and downfall. For those who faced his ride-on in the Viridian Gym, the memory lingered as a symbol of the moment when the game revealed that villains could be closer than expected and authority could hide shadows within. Among all gym leaders across the regions, Whitney of Goldenrod City became one of the most infamous. Her normal-type gym may not have looked intimidating at first glance, but for countless trainers in Johto, she became a wall that tested both patience and resilience. While other leaders challenged players through puzzles, elemental advantages, or grand atmospheres, Whitney's power came from surprise. She took a type many underestimated and turned it into a memorable trial that left a lasting mark on Pokemon history. Her gym itself reflected her personality. Goldenrod, being the largest city in Johto, was bustling with commerce, media, and culture. Within this metropolis, Whitney's gym stood as a pink and white maze that looked cheerful at first glance, a deceptive prelude to the difficulty ahead. The trainers inside were enthusiastic and cheerful, a deceptive prelude to the true difficulty that awaited challengers. By the time players reached Whitney, they might have assumed the battle would be a light-hearted encounter. Instead, they found themselves facing one of the most notorious battles of the second generation. Her team in gold and silver centered around Miltank, a bulky, deceptively fast normal type that carried the dreaded move Rollout. Introduced in this generation, Rollout gained power with each consecutive hit, and when combined with Miltank's speed and defenses, it became a nightmare for unprepared teams. Many challengers entered the battle with underleveled Pokemon or poor counters, only to watch helplessly as Rollout swept through their party. Miltank's ability to heal itself with Milk Drink prolonged the suffering, creating one of the most difficult mid-game challenges in the entire series. The cultural shock of this battle cemented Whitney's reputation. Players vented frustration in magazines, online forums, and conversations with friends, sharing stories of how Miltank defeated entire teams. Unlike the Legendaries or Elite Four challenges, this was an early-game gym leader wielding a seemingly ordinary creature in a way that felt unstoppable. Whitney's battle became a rite of passage, a story almost every player carried with them as part of their journey. Obscure trivia reveals that Miltank's stats were carefully tuned to maximize frustration. Its speed allowed it to outspeed many opponents, while its bulk prevented easy knockouts. Its access to Stomp added insult to injury with the chance of flinching. These elements combined into a battle that felt unfair, though it was technically balanced within the mechanics of the game. This design showcased how Game Freak could create emotional impact through clever stat distribution and movesets, not just raw difficulty. Whitney's personality added another layer to her legacy. Unlike leaders such as Sabrina or Giovanni, who carried an aura of intimidation, Whitney was portrayed as cheerful and youthful. After losing, she famously burst into tears, refusing to hand over the badge until consoled by another trainer. This unexpected reaction reinforced her identity as both approachable and unpredictable. For players, the emotional outburst was almost as memorable as the battle itself. It humanized her, reminding players that gym leaders were not just obstacles, but characters with feelings and quirks. In the anime, Whitney appeared in a similar fashion. Her battle with Ash highlighted the difficulty of Miltank, mirroring the game's reputation. Episodes showcased her playful energy, but also her overwhelming strength, creating a blend of charm and challenge. This consistency across media reinforced her status as one of the most notorious gym leaders of her generation. Obscure cultural details also connect Whitney to broader themes. Goldenrod City represented modernity, with its radio tower, department store, and magnet train. Whitney, with her youthful energy and normal-type focus, symbolized the everyday citizen within this metropolis. Normal types themselves often represented the ordinary, but her ability to wield them so effectively suggested that even the mundane could hold great power. This thematic resonance made her gym stand out, not just as a battle, but as a cultural statement. Underestimating the ordinary could lead to downfall. Her influence extended beyond Johto. In Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Whitney returned with an updated team, once again wielding her signature Miltank. Though later generations balanced mechanics to reduce frustration, her reputation endured. Players who had struggled years earlier found themselves facing the same challenge again, their memories reignited. This continuity preserved her place in Pokemon legend, ensuring that her name was always associated with difficulty. Competitive history reflects Miltank's surprising utility. While not dominant at the highest tiers, it found niches thanks to its speed, support options, and ability to spread status. Whitney's use of it gave the Pokemon cultural weight, reminding fans of its potential. Even if it was not the strongest choice in tournaments, its association with one of the most infamous gym battles ever elevated its profile. Fan interpretations often emphasize the emotional duality of Whitney. Some see her tears as a sign of immaturity, fitting her youthful personality. Others interpret them as a deeper commentary on the pressures of leadership, where even figures of authority can struggle with loss. The ambiguity of her reaction allowed fans to project their own experiences, making her more relatable than many other leaders. Obscure trivia also notes that Whitney's gym was one of the few in early generations to feature an all-female roster of trainers. This mirrored Erika's gym in Celadon, suggesting a deliberate choice by the developers to emphasize themes of femininity, community, and type specialization. While the reasons remain unconfirmed, the effect was notable. Whitney's gym felt distinct, culturally rooted, and thematically consistent. Ultimately, Whitney represented a perfect storm of design. Her cheerful personality disarmed challengers, her gym reflected her playful energy, and her signature Miltank created one of the most memorable difficulty spikes in Pokemon history. She demonstrated how even a normal-type leader could leave an indelible mark on players' journeys, not through legendary power, but through clever design and emotional storytelling. For those who faced her and endured the crushing power of rollout, the memory lingered long after the badge was earned. a reminder that sometimes the most ordinary appearances conceal the greatest trials. Morty's gym in Ecruteak was designed to embody both mystery and disorientation. The floor appeared as a void, where players had to feel their way forward across invisible tiles. One wrong step sent them back to the start, creating an illusion of falling into darkness. This puzzle was more than a test of memory. It was a reflection of Morty's connection to the unseen world, where the line between reality and spirit blurred. The darkness of the gym symbolized uncertainty, mirroring the themes of ghost Pokemon that thrived in shadows and illusions. His signature Pokemon in Gold and Silver was Gengar, a creature notorious for its mischievous grin and deadly potential. It struck fear into unprepared challengers with powerful ghost-type moves, speed, and status effects. For many players, facing this battle was their first true encounter with the might of a fully evolved ghost type. Gengar's presence made Morty's gym not only thematically memorable, but also mechanically daunting, as counters were limited and missteps often led to defeat. Ecruteak itself added layers to Morty's character. The city was steeped in myth, home to the Burn Tower and Tin Tower, locations tied to Ho-Oh and the legendary beasts. Morty was portrayed as a keeper of these myths, a trainer who did not simply battle, but also interpreted history. His dialogue emphasized his awareness of unseen forces and his respect for the spiritual side of the world. This gave him depth beyond being just a gym leader. He was a guardian of lore, bridging the gap between players and the mysteries of Johto's past. The Burn Tower, in particular, tied Morty to some of the most famous legends in the series. It was said that the tower once housed 3 Pokemon who perished in a fire before being revived by Ho-Oh, becoming Entei, Raikou, and Suicune. Morty's presence near this landmark connected him directly to the cycle of death, rebirth, and spiritual transformation. While his gym tested players mechanically, his lore rooted him firmly in the broader mythology of the region. The anime portrayed Morty with calm dignity, highlighting his role as both a gym leader and a medium between the living and the spiritual world. His bond with Gengar was emphasized, and his role in explaining ghost lore to Ash and his friends deepened the audience's understanding of Ecruteak's myths. He was not shown as frightening, but as a thoughtful, wise figure who treated the supernatural with respect rather than fear. This portrayal reinforced the idea that ghosts in Pokemon were not merely malevolent, but also guides and guardians. Obscure trivia adds further depth. In the Japanese versions of Gold and Silver, Morty speaks aspirationally about witnessing Ho-Oh, a nuance softened in some localizations. This subtle change altered how players perceived his role. In one version, he was directly tied to legendary destiny, while in the other, he was more of a caretaker of local traditions. The shift demonstrates how localization can shape interpretation, highlighting the delicate balance between myth and translation. His team evolved across games, reflecting changes in mechanics and balance. In the original Gold and Silver, Ghost-type moves were primarily special attacks, and Gengar dominated thanks to speed and coverage. By the time of Heart Gold and Soul Silver, his team had been adjusted to reflect modernized mechanics, with more diverse ghost types and updated strategies. These shifts not only refreshed his battle, but also kept his identity as a ghost master relevant across generations. Culturally, Morty represented the quiet strength of tradition. While leaders like Whitney shocked players with difficulty spikes, Morty tested them through atmosphere, lore, and patience. His calm demeanor contrasted with the unsettling nature of his team, creating a balance that emphasized respect for the unknown. For many, he became one of the most beloved ghost specialists, embodying the idea that the supernatural was not to be feared, but to be understood. Fan interpretations often explore Morty's role as a seer. Some theorize that he saw more of the Pokemon world than others, glimpsing the balance between life and death. His association with Ho-Oh fueled speculation that he was chosen as a guardian, someone destined to witness rebirth and protect sacred truths. These interpretations highlight how his character invited imagination, going beyond the simple role of handing out a badge. The design of his gym in later remakes further emphasized illusion and uncertainty. Updated visuals made the darkened pathways more striking, immersing players in a void-like experience. Combined with eerie music, the gym became one of the most atmospheric in the series, reinforcing Morty's identity as a leader who tested perception as much as skill. Morty's legacy is tied not only to his battle, but also to the myths he represented. His gym was more than a challenge. It was a narrative device that connected players to the legends of Ecruteak, teaching them that history and spirituality were central to the world of Pokémonday. His calm authority ensured that the ghosts of Johto were remembered not as monsters, but as integral parts of a larger cycle. Pryce stood out among Johto's leaders as a figure of age and experience. Known as the teacher of winter's harshness, he embodied the qualities of endurance, patience, and discipline that come with both time and environment. Unlike younger leaders who expressed fiery ambition or playful energy, Pryce represented wisdom tempered by hardship. His very presence suggested that gym leaders were not only defined by youth or strength, but could also reflect maturity and life experience. His gym in Mahogany Town was one of the more unusual structures in the region. The design focused on sliding ice puzzles, where players had to glide across frozen tiles to find the correct path. This mechanic symbolized the theme of control versus chaos. With every step, players lost direct command over their movement, forced instead to trust momentum and planning. The puzzle reflected Pryce's philosophy mastery was not about brute force, but about precision, patience, and the ability to think several moves ahead. The centerpiece of his team in gold and silver was Piloswine, a bulky ice and ground type whose design drew from ancient mammoths. While not as flashy as dragon types, or as notorious as Whitney's Miltank, Piloswine represented resilience and raw strength, able to hit hard with stab moves while also taking punishment. For players encountering it late in the Johto journey, it embodied the grueling nature of ice battles, where status effects and raw endurance could overwhelm careless challengers. Pryce's age was not just aesthetic, it was an intentional narrative choice. His dialogue often referenced the lessons of time, and his presence as an elderly gym leader contrasted sharply with the youthful energy of many others. This dynamic underscored the diversity of trainers within the Pokemon world, reminding players that mastery was not tied to age, but to dedication and experience. In many ways, Pryce symbolized the wisdom of elders, carrying traditions and philosophies that stretched beyond his own battles. Obscure trivia connects Pryce strongly to the Pokemon Adventures manga, where he played a surprisingly dark and complex role. In that continuity, he sought to manipulate time itself, using Celebi, driven by grief over losing two Lapras he had cared for in the past. This portrayal turned him from a stoic leader into a tragic villain, someone whose pain led to desperate actions. The storyline emphasized his obsession with regaining what he had lost, illustrating how even respected figures could falter when consumed by sorrow. This version of Pryce added depth to his character, transforming him from a simple gym leader into one of the more layered personalities in the franchise. Thematically, Pryce's association with ice carried symbolism beyond type specialization. Ice represented stasis, endurance, and harsh conditions, qualities that matched his identity as a seasoned master. His emphasis on teaching players about hardship mirrored the challenges of surviving winter long, cold, and demanding. Facing him was not just about defeating his Pokemon, but about proving resilience against relentless conditions. In the anime, Pryce was portrayed with stern dignity, often emphasizing his experience and no-nonsense demeanor. Episodes featuring him highlighted his mentorship qualities, showing how he guided others not with enthusiasm, but with firm lessons. His role reinforced the idea that age brought authority and wisdom, though sometimes at the cost of warmth. While some leaders charmed viewers with energy or flamboyance, Pryce left impressions through restraint and gravitas. Culturally, Pryce represented the archetype of the elder sage, a figure found in many traditions worldwide. His design evoked the image of a seasoned martial arts master or a weathered hermit, someone whose value lay not in flashy displays, but in quiet knowledge. This archetype resonated strongly with fans who appreciated the variety of personalities across gym leaders, showing that the series respected multiple forms of mastery. His return in Heart Gold and Soul Silver maintained his presence, though by then, newer mechanics had shifted the balance of power. Still, Piloswine remained his ace, anchoring his identity across generations. The continuity of his team emphasized that even as games evolved, certain leaders remained fixed, much like the element they represented. This consistency reinforced the perception of Pryce as an unchanging figure, steady and immovable, like ice itself. Fan interpretations often focus on his connections to loss and endurance. Some view him as a mentor who embodies positive qualities of age, while others see him as a tragic figure burdened by regrets. His portrayal in the manga amplified this latter interpretation, sparking discussions about how grief shapes identity. Unlike younger leaders who embodied ambition or passion, Pryce raised questions about resilience, mortality, and the costs of time. Obscure design details in his gym highlight the developer's intention to make him stand out. While sliding ice puzzles were later used in other gyms, Mahogany's layout required both experimentation and patience. The constant resets from failed attempts mirrored the idea of learning from mistakes, a philosophy tied closely to age and wisdom. Players who grew frustrated at the puzzle were, in a way, experiencing the very lesson Pryce sought to teach: perseverance. Pryce also represented a shift in how gym leaders could be framed narratively. While many served primarily as mechanical obstacles, his character carried implications of personal history and emotional weight. His identity as an elder suggested a lifetime of experiences, hinting at stories untold. This depth made him stand out among his peers, reinforcing the idea that gym leaders could be more than their battles. The competitive implications of his team were modest, but his cultural footprint was outsized. Piloswine itself found niches thanks to bulk and access to moves like Ice Shard in later generations, but within the narrative, its significance was magnified by its association with Pryce. For fans, the memory of facing his Ice-type team lingered not because of dominance, but because of the thematic lessons tied to it. Pryce's role across media, from games to anime to manga, demonstrated the flexibility of gym leader identities. He could be a stern mentor, a tragic villain, or a symbol of endurance, This adaptability reflected the richness of the Pokemon world, where characters could be reinterpreted across contexts without losing their core identity. For many, Pryce remains one of the most underrated but quietly significant leaders, embodying themes of time, loss, and wisdom that resonate far beyond the walls of Mahogany Gym. Roxanne, the first gym leader of Hoenn in Rustboro City, was more than a test of strength for new trainers. She was also a teacher, mentor, and representative of how knowledge itself shaped battles. Unlike many leaders whose identities were rooted in personality quirks or elemental symbolism alone, Roxanne's character was tied directly to education. She worked at the Trainers' School in Rustboro, teaching young trainers the fundamentals of battling, strategy, and responsibility. This unusual role set her apart from the beginning, highlighting her as a figure of guidance and intellectual authority rather than sheer power. Her gym reflected this identity. The design was simple compared to later puzzles, but it introduced challengers to the basics of progression. Trainers inside acted as her students, testing the player before they faced the leader herself. This structure mirrored a classroom, with the final exam being the battle against Roxanne. It was a subtle but effective way to reinforce her character as both instructor and leader, showing that she cared as much about teaching as she did about winning. The centerpiece of her team was Nosepass, a rock type with a distinctive compass-like nose and heavy defenses. For players encountering her in Ruby and Sapphire, Nosepass was an unexpected obstacle. It resisted common early game moves and punished unprepared challengers who relied solely on physical attacks. Its bulk and access to status moves made it a surprisingly tough opponent, teaching players the importance of type advantages and patience. Nosepass symbolized Roxanne's identity, perfectly sturdy, grounded, and tied to the theme of direction, much like a teacher guiding her students. Obscure trivia reveals that Nosepass was chosen deliberately as her ace to introduce players to Hoenn's emphasis on new designs. Unlike Brock, who relied on Geodude and Onyx, Roxanne's Nosepass was unique to the region, ensuring that players felt they were stepping into a fresh world. The choice highlighted the developers' desire to connect gym leaders more directly to regional identity, making them cultural ambassadors as much as battle masters. Her personality and dialogue emphasized calmness, rationality, and a love for knowledge. She was polite in victory and gracious in defeat, embodying the traits of a teacher who encouraged growth. This tone made her gym one of the less intimidating stops in Hoenn, though her battle could still overwhelm unprepared challengers. Roxanne's identity reminded players that gyms were not only about confrontation, but also about education, mentorship, and cultural context. In the anime, Roxanne was portrayed as cheerful yet serious, reinforcing her role as an instructor. Episodes featuring her highlighted her dual identity as a leader and teacher, showing how she balanced responsibility to her students with her duty as a gym leader. Her use of Nosepass in the anime battle emphasized its defensive qualities, and her relationship with her students reinforced the theme of community. Culturally, Roxanne represented the archetype of the scholar, while other leaders embodied archetypes like the soldier, the mystic, or the performer. She carried the mantle of the intellectual. Her trainer's school symbolized structured learning, and her gym battle was an extension of that classroom. This design choice reflected a broader theme in Hoenn, where knowledge, tradition, and environment were all deeply tied to identity. Her rematches in Emerald and later games showed her growth, expanding her team to include additional rock types. These updates reflected her continued study and mastery, reinforcing her image as a trainer who learned alongside her students. The continuity of her character across generations emphasized the idea that teaching was not static. It evolved with new information, just as she adapted her strategies to new challenges. Obscure design details highlight how Roxanne's gym subtly prepared players for Hoen's unique focus on double battles and more complex mechanics. While her own battle was single format, the presence of multiple student trainers hinted at teamwork and progression, planting seeds for later challenges. In this way, Roxanne's gym acted as a microcosm of the region's philosophy: learning, growth, and adaptability. Fan interpretations often emphasize her role as a mentor figure, not only for the player, but also for her students, and even for other leaders. Some imagine her as a bridge between academia and competitive battling, someone who valued research as much as victory. Others see her as a cultural ambassador for Rustboro, embodying the city's industrial and educational identity. These interpretations highlight how deeply her character resonated despite her relatively modest screen time. Thematically, Roxanne symbolized guidance. Just as Nosepass pointed north with its compass-like design, she pointed trainers toward growth and maturity. Her emphasis on rock types reinforced stability and endurance, qualities that reflected her own identity as a teacher. Her calm demeanor and reliance on defense over brute strength reminded players that wisdom and patience often triumphed over recklessness. Her presence in later remakes, like Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, preserved this identity while enhancing her presentation. Updated visuals highlighted her elegance and authority, while her expanded team reflected modern mechanics. Yet her essence remained the same: a teacher, a mentor, and a leader who embodied the balance of knowledge and strength. Roxanne's cultural footprint may not be as loud as Whitney's frustration-inducing mill tank or Sabrina's eerie psychic powers, but her quiet strength made her unforgettable. She was the leader who taught players the fundamentals of patience, the importance of preparation, and the value of knowledge. Her gym was not just a battleground, but a classroom, and her role in Rustboro made her more than a checkpoint on the journey. She was an educator, shaping the next generation of trainers. Norman was unlike any gym leader players had ever faced before, because he was not just a test of strength, but also a member of the player's own family. Introduced in Ruby and Sapphire as the father of the protagonist, Norman redefined what a gym leader could represent in narrative terms. Instead of being a stranger, he was a deeply personal obstacle, and the battle against him carried emotional weight that set Hoenn apart from previous regions. His gym in Petalburg City reflected both his personality and his philosophy. The structure was divided into multiple rooms, each designed to highlight a particular strategy or theme. Trainers inside specialized in specific approaches, such as status moves, high damage, or speed. This arrangement gave players a series of lessons before they reached Norman himself, reinforcing his role as both teacher and father. It was as if the player had to graduate through different tests of maturity before facing the ultimate challenge, proving themselves against their parent. The centerpiece of his team was Slaking, a massive normal type with overwhelming stats. Its attack power rivaled that of many legendary Pokemon, and its bulk made it extraordinarily difficult to knock out. However, its unique ability, Truant, forced it to loaf around every other turn. This balance created a fascinating dynamic. Slaking was terrifying when it attacked, but it required careful timing to manage its drawbacks. For many players, this was the first time they encountered such a high-risk, high-reward mechanic, making the battle both intimidating and memorable. Obscure trivia reveals that Norman's slaking was intentionally designed as a reflection of his identity as a father. Slaking's immense power symbolized his authority, while its forced pauses reflected restraint, the idea that even overwhelming strength could be held back. Facing slaking was less about raw numbers and more about strategy, mirroring the lessons Norman sought to teach. For players, defeating this powerhouse felt like proving their maturity, not just as trainers, but as children ready to step out from under their father's shadow. Norman's role as a parent was groundbreaking for the series. Previous games featured protagonists who left home with little more than encouragement from their mothers, but Ruby and Sapphire tied the family directly into the journey. The protagonist's father was not only alive and present, but also one of the major figures in the region. This shift added depth to the world, suggesting that gym leaders had families, responsibilities, and personal lives beyond their official roles. It made the world feel more grounded and believable. In the anime, Norman was portrayed as warm yet strict, emphasizing his dual role as father and gym leader. Episodes highlighted his relationship with his children, especially May and Max, tying the family theme into the show's broader narrative. His battles were shown as tests of character as much as skill, reinforcing his identity as a mentor both in and out of the gym. Fan interpretations often emphasize the emotional resonance of Norman's role. Some see him as a representation of the challenges of growing up the moment when children must prove themselves against their parents to establish independence. Others view him as a mentor figure who embodies the balance between authority and encouragement. His position as the player's father allowed for deeper personal connections, making his gym battle one of the most emotionally charged moments in the franchise. Obscure cultural notes tie Norman's presence to Hoenn's themes of family and community. His home in Petalburg and his interactions with his wife and children reinforced the idea that trainers were not isolated adventurers, but part of larger social networks. This was a significant step for the series, which often presented the protagonist as a solitary figure. By grounding the journey in family, the developers emphasized that even great adventures had roots in personal connections. From a mechanical perspective, Norman's use of normal types was fitting. Normal types are often seen as the baseline of the Pokemon world, unflashy but versatile, embodying adaptability and resilience. By mastering this type, Norman symbolized the foundation of training itself. He demonstrated that strength was not limited to flashy elemental powers, but could also come from balance and fundamentals. His gym battle reminded players that even the ordinary could be extraordinary when mastered fully. In rematches and later appearances, Norman's team expanded to include additional normal types, showcasing his continued dedication to the type. His slaking remained the centerpiece, a constant reminder of his overwhelming power. This consistency reinforced his identity, demonstrating that his philosophy was not fleeting, but deeply rooted in who he was. Thematically, Norman represented the idea of crossing thresholds. Facing him was not just about earning a badge, but about stepping into adulthood within the narrative of the game. It symbolized the moment when the protagonist stood as an equal to their father, proving that they were ready to forge their own path. This theme resonated deeply with players, who often remembered the Petalburg gym battle as one of the most meaningful in the series. Obscure trivia from game data suggests that Norman's role was planned early in the development of Ruby and Sapphire, as his team and dialogue carried more weight than many other leaders. His position as both father and obstacle was central to Hoenn's design, emphasizing the developer's intent to make family a major theme. By weaving him into the personal story of the protagonist, they created one of the most narratively impactful leaders in the franchise. Norman's cultural footprint endures because of this narrative depth. He is remembered not only for his slaking or his gym puzzle, but for the emotional context of his battle. He demonstrated that gym leaders could be more than obstacles, they could be integral parts of the protagonist's life, shaping both their journey and their growth. His legacy remains one of the most distinctive in the series, standing as proof that even a seemingly ordinary type could carry extraordinary meaning when tied to themes of family and identity. Fantina, the ghost-type gym leader of Hearthome City in Sinnoh, carried with her an elegance and flamboyance rarely seen among her peers. Unlike the quiet mysticism of Morty or the stoic wisdom of Pryce, Fantina blended grace with theatrical flair. Her role extended beyond battling, as she was also known for her prominence in contests, embodying a lifestyle that merged artistry with strength. This dual identity made her one of the most multidimensional leaders in the series, a trainer whose personality and skill extended into multiple corners of Sinnoh's culture. Her gym reflected her unique approach. In the original Diamond and Pearl versions, her gym used quiz doors that asked type matchup questions. In Platinum, the design changed to a dark maze navigated by a flashlight, aligning the puzzle more closely with ghostly theatrics. This design tied directly to her role as an entertainer. Rather than simply testing strength, she tested wit, perception, and memory. In Platinum, the puzzle shifted to a more straightforward but still theatrical design, reinforcing the idea that her gym was as much about showmanship as challenge. These changes mirrored her identity as a performer who constantly reinvented her presentation. Fantina's standout ace in Diamond and Pearl was Miss Magius. In later versions and rematches, Drifblim became closely associated with her style, a ghost type known for its eerie balloon-like form and strange lore about carrying people away. Drifblim symbolized both her flair for the dramatic and her mastery of the supernatural. Its unique design made it an unsettling yet captivating centerpiece, embodying her philosophy of blending mystery with elegance. Later teams incorporated additional ghost types, expanding her repertoire, but Drifblim remained emblematic of her style, graceful yet unnerving, beautiful yet strange. Her dialogue across games emphasized her distinct personality. In localized versions, Fantina spoke with a French accent, distinguishing her from other leaders and underscoring her connection to fashion, art, and performance. This choice created a sense of cosmopolitan identity, suggesting that she was worldly and cultured, not confined to the boundaries of Sinnoh. It also linked her to the contest culture of Hearthome, where beauty and performance were celebrated alongside battle prowess. Obscure trivia notes that Fantina's position as a gym leader varied between versions. In the original Diamond and Pearl, she appeared later in the gym sequence, while in Platinum she was placed earlier. This shift altered how players perceived her in one version. She was a seasoned mid to late challenge, while in another, she appeared as a relatively early obstacle. The developer's decision reflected adjustments to pacing and balance, but it also highlighted her flexibility as a character who could shine in multiple contexts. Her prominence in contests made her stand out culturally. Unlike other leaders who focused solely on gyms, Fantina's mastery extended into an entirely different competitive system. She was depicted as a top coordinator, participating in contests that emphasized beauty, appeal, and stage presence. This dual role suggested that strength in the Pokemon world was not limited to combat, but could also encompass artistry and performance. Fantina thus represented the fusion of elegance and power, showing that trainers could excel in multiple arenas. In the anime, Fantina was portrayed with vibrant energy and theatricality. Episodes featuring her emphasized her love of performance, with elaborate entrances and a flair for drama. Her battles were depicted as spectacles, blending contest-style moves with traditional combat, reinforcing her identity as a showwoman. This portrayal expanded her cultural footprint, making her one of the more memorable Sinnoh leaders in the eyes of fans. Thematically, Fantina embodied the blending of worlds' ghostly mystique with glamorous presentation, competitive battling with artistic performance. She challenged players not just to defeat her team, but to appreciate the artistry of strategy and the elegance of movement. Her presence reminded trainers that battles could be more than brute force. They could also be expressions of personality and culture. Obscure cultural interpretations view Fantina as a commentary on Sinnoh's diversity. While many leaders reflected regional traditions, Fantina represented cosmopolitan influence, as if she had brought global culture into Hearthome. Her French accent and localization reinforced this interpretation, making her stand out as a figure who transcended boundaries. This detail positioned her as a leader who not only embodied her type's specialty, but also represented Sinnoh's place in a wider world. Her competitive influence was modest, as ghost types in her era were often overshadowed by stronger options, but her team composition encouraged creativity. Driftblim, in particular, became memorable not just for stats, but for its cultural associations. Its lore about carrying away people and Pokemon tied into the unsettling yet whimsical atmosphere of ghost types, and its association with Fantina elevated its profile. Players remembered it not just as a strange balloon, but as a symbol of one of the most stylish gym battles in the region. The design of Hearthome itself reinforced her identity. As the cultural hub of Sinnoh, it hosted contests, fan clubs, and media outlets, making it the perfect stage for a leader who embodied performance. Fantina's gym and her prominence in contests tied her directly to this theme, anchoring her within the cultural heart of the region. Her presence elevated Hearthome from just another city to a focal point of artistry and expression. Fan interpretations often highlight Fantina's dual role as one of the earliest examples of leaders crossing between battling and alternative competitions. Some fans view her as a trailblazer who expanded the scope of what it meant to be a leader, while others emphasize her theatrical personality as a refreshing break from the stoic or intimidating figures of earlier games. Her flamboyance sparked discussion and admiration, ensuring her place in the broader tapestry of the franchise. Fantina's legacy endures because she demonstrated that strength and beauty, mystery and elegance could coexist. She was not simply a gatekeeper on the path to the Pokemon League, but a symbol of Sinnoh's cultural richness, blending ghostly mystique with artistic performance. Her Driftbloom floated as a reminder of her unique philosophy, battles as spectacles, gyms as stages, and leaders as cultural icons. For many players, facing Fantina was not just about winning a badge, but about experiencing one of the most theatrical and unforgettable encounters in the series. Clair of Blackthorn City carried with her an aura of pride and tradition. Known as the Dragon Master of Johto, she was both a reflection of her city's heritage and a bridge to the greater mythos of the Pokemon world. Her reputation stemmed not only from her strength in battle, but also from her lineage, as she was the cousin of Lance, the champion of the Indigo League. This family connection positioned her within one of the most respected dragon clans in the series, and her role as a gym leader became a story not only of personal strength, but also of legacy. Blackthorn City itself reinforced her identity. Nestled deep within the mountains, the city was remote, accessible only after long journeys through icy caverns and rugged terrain. Its isolation symbolized exclusivity, as though only the most determined trainers were worthy of standing before its leader. The city's Dragon's Den, a sacred cavern where dragons were trained and revered, tied Claire directly to ancient traditions. This cultural grounding gave her gym and her team weight beyond mechanics. She was not just a leader, but a guardian of history. Her team in gold and silver revolved around Dragonair and Kingdra, culminating in her ace Kingdra. This Pokemon was particularly notable, as it was one of the few creatures at the time to combine the dragon type with water, eliminating the traditional dragon weakness to ice. For players unprepared, Kingdra presented a formidable challenge, as it resisted many common counters and struck back with powerful special attacks. This choice reinforced Claire's identity as a leader who went beyond the expected, wielding creatures that required careful preparation and strategy to defeat. The difficulty of her battles cemented her legacy. For many trainers, Claire represented one of the steepest difficulty spikes in the second generation. Her Kingdra's resistance to traditional counters frustrated challengers who assumed dragons were always weak to ice, forcing them to adapt and reconsider their strategies. This design reflected the philosophy of Blackthorn itself. Mastery of dragons was not about exploiting weaknesses, but about patience, adaptability, and resilience. Claire's pride also became legendary. After losing, she initially refused to hand over the Rising Badge, declaring that the player was unworthy despite their victory. It was only after the Elder of the Dragon's Den confirmed the protagonist's strength and character that she relented. This narrative twist made her one of the few leaders to challenge not just the player's skill, but also their worthiness as a person. It emphasized that in her eyes, defeating dragons was not simply about power, it was about embodying qualities of honor and respect. In the anime, Claire's portrayal expanded upon these traits. Episodes featuring her emphasized her pride, determination, and deep connection to dragons. Her battles were depicted as spectacular displays of power and heritage, reinforcing her role as both a warrior and a guardian of tradition. Her relationship with Lance was also highlighted, connecting her story to the broader lineage of dragon masters within the franchise. Obscure trivia deepens her significance. Early development notes suggest that Claire's refusal to give the badge was meant to highlight Johto's focus on character as much as mechanics. Unlike Kanto, which emphasized raw progression, Johto tied gym victories to themes of morality, tradition, and community. Claire's storyline embodied this philosophy, making her gym not just another step, but a moral trial. Her identity as Lance's cousin also added layers. This familial tie reinforced the idea that dragon mastery was hereditary, passed through generations of dedicated trainers. Fans often speculated on the nature of their clan, imagining a lineage of dragon tamers whose influence extended beyond regional boundaries. This connection also elevated Claire's importance, linking her directly to the pinnacle of the Pokemon League. Thematically, Claire symbolized pride and humility. Her initial refusal to yield reflected her arrogance, but her eventual concession demonstrated growth. This arc resonated with players who experienced firsthand how even the most powerful leaders were subject to flaws and growth. Her character thus became more dynamic, than many peers, reflecting both strength and vulnerability. Competitive analysis of her Kingdra underscored its uniqueness. At the time, Kingdra's typing made it one of the most resilient dragons in existence, and while its move pool was limited, it was notoriously difficult to counter. Facing it in-game required creativity, as straightforward strategies often failed. This difficulty cemented Claire's reputation as one of the toughest gym leaders of her generation, a title that persists in fan discussions to this day. Her return in Heart Gold and Soul Silver preserved these traits while enhancing her presentation. Updated visuals emphasized her elegance and authority, while expanded dialogue deepened her personality. Her continued reliance on dragons reinforced her cultural and mechanical identity, ensuring that she remained one of the most iconic leaders in the series. Fan interpretations often explore Claire's pride as both flaw and strength. Some see her as a representation of the burdens of legacy, a woman living in the shadow of her cousin Lance and striving to prove herself worthy. Others interpret her pride as a necessary defense, a reflection of the weight of tradition she carried. In either view, she embodied complexity. A leader who was more than just a battle, she was a story of heritage, identity, and growth. Claire's gym itself contributed to her aura. The layout of Blackthorn's gym involved rising platforms and narrow walkways, symbolizing the climb toward mastery. Challengers had to navigate these obstacles before reaching her, mirroring the arduous path toward understanding dragons. The design reinforced the exclusivity of her position, suggesting that only those willing to endure hardship could stand before her. Her cultural impact remains strong. Claire is remembered not only as a difficult leader, but as a figure who embodied the values of her city and type. Her refusal to yield until the Dragon's Den trial underscored the idea that badges were not mere tokens, but symbols of worthiness. Her connection to Lance ensured that she remained tied to the broader mythos of dragon mastery, anchoring her as one of the most important figures in Johto's lore. Claire's presence demonstrated that gym leaders could be more than obstacles. They could be narrative figures who challenged players morally, emotionally, and mechanically. Her blend of pride, tradition, and eventual humility made her a memorable and enduring character. For players who faced her Kingdra and endured the trial of the Dragon's Den, the experience left a mark that extended beyond victory. She represented the height of Johto's traditions, the weight of heritage, and the lesson that true mastery required more than power, it required character. Byron of Canalave City embodied the spirit of endurance and industry. As the steel-type gym leader of Sinnoh, his identity was tied not only to his team, but also to the culture of the city he represented. Canalave was a harbor town steeped in trade, exploration, and ancient history, and Byron stood at the crossroads of these traditions. His gym and personality reflected durability, resilience, and a pride and strength that came from building rather than simply inheriting power. His gym was one of the more visually striking in Sinnoh, designed as a maze of moving platforms and steel girders. The layout required players to navigate elevators and shifting paths, symbolizing both the mechanical nature of steel and the industrial culture of Canalave. The sound of machinery, the sight of iron beams, and the sense of vertical progression made the gym feel like a foundry of discipline, with Byron himself waiting at the pinnacle. It was a setting that reflected his philosophy, strength forged through labor and perseverance. The centerpiece of his team was Bastiodon, a fossil-based steel and rock type with one of the most defensive stat spreads in the series. Unlike offensive powerhouses, Bastiodon specialized in absorbing damage, turning battles into wars of attrition. For players, this battle often required patience, as brute force rarely broke through easily. Bastiodon's design, reminiscent of ancient ceratopsids with a fortress-like face, tied directly to Byron's identity as a guardian of strength and heritage. His reliance on such a Pokemon made his battles stand out as tests of persistence rather than speed. Byron's role was further distinguished by his family connections. He was the father of Rourke, Oreburgh City's rock-type leader. This relationship tied him into a rare, intergenerational dynamic among gym leaders, highlighting how families in the Pokemon world could pass down philosophies and values. Rourke represented the earnest enthusiasm of a younger leader, while Byron embodied the hardened resilience of experience. Their shared bond emphasized the continuity of traditions across generations, reinforcing the theme that leadership and mastery could be inherited, but also redefined. Obscure trivia shows that Byron's Bastiodon mirrored Rourke's Cranidos, both being fossil Pokemon representing different philosophies of battle. Cranidos symbolized offense, striking quickly and decisively, while Bastiodon embodied defense, standing immovable. This duality reflected the relationship between father and son, demonstrating how the same heritage could produce contrasting approaches. The developers' choice to align their teams this way underscored the thematic unity of their family story. Byron's dialogue emphasized pride in strength and resilience, often highlighting the importance of defense as a foundation. His personality was more gruff and straightforward than flamboyant, making him one of the more grounded leaders of Sinnoh. He stood as a counterpoint to the elegance of Fantina or the mysticism of Candice, offering instead the steady reliability of Steel. This contrast enriched Sinnoh's roster of leaders, ensuring that each brought a distinct cultural flavor to their city and their type. In the anime, Byron was depicted with boisterous enthusiasm, a slightly comedic twist on his game persona. His interactions with Rourke were emphasized, showing the father-son relationship more directly. Episodes highlighted their playful rivalry, as both took pride in their respective fossils and philosophies. This portrayal humanized Byron further, making him more than just a stern guardian of steel, but also a father who found joy in sparring with his child. Culturally, Byron represented the theme of history and endurance. Canalave was home to the Canalave Library, one of the most lore-rich locations in the Pokemon world. Ancient myths about the creation of Sinnoh, the legendary Pokemon of time and space, and the foundations of the world itself were preserved there. Byron's proximity to this library tied him indirectly to these myths, positioning him as a protector of tradition. His gym symbolized the present industry and progress, while the library symbolized the past. Together, they formed a cultural balance that defined Canalave City. Fan interpretations often emphasize Byron's role as a father figure and as a representation of resilience. Some view his defensive philosophy as a metaphor for protecting loved ones, reflecting his familial ties. Others interpret his reliance on Bastiodon as symbolic of guardianship, as if he stood watch over Sinnoh's heritage, much like his ace stood guard in battle. These interpretations highlight how even leaders with limited screen time could inspire deeper cultural readings. Competitive implications of Bastiodon were modest in official formats, as its weaknesses to common types limited its viability. However, its design and association with Byron elevated its cultural significance. Bastiodon was remembered not as a dominant force, but as a symbol of defense, an embodiment of the idea that strength could come from standing firm rather than striking hard. This thematic resonance ensured its place in fan memory. Obscure design details in his gym reinforced the developer's emphasis on verticality and mechanical atmosphere. The moving platforms forced players to think strategically about positioning, mirroring how steel as a type demanded patience and planning. The clanging sounds and industrial visuals added immersion, creating a sensory experience that matched Byron's philosophy of forged strength. Byron's connection to Sinnoh's broader themes was subtle but significant. Sinnoh, as a region, emphasized history, myth, and balance. Leaders like Byron contributed to this narrative by embodying the endurance of civilization, the passage of tradition from father to son, and the resilience required to face the future. His gruff pride reflected the confidence of a city built on steel and trade, where durability was as valued as ambition. His legacy continues in discussions of underrated gym leaders. While not as flashy as Volkner or as infamous as Whitney from Johto, Byron left an impression through his ties to family and his representation of steel's philosophy. His gym was a test of patience, his team a symbol of defense, and his personality a reminder that strength could be quiet, enduring, and deeply rooted in heritage. For players who stood before his Bastiodon, the battle was not only a mechanical test, but also a lesson in persistence, reinforcing Sinnoh's identity as a region where history and strength walked hand in hand. Candice of Snowpoint City embodied the quiet resilience of those who lived in the far north. As the ice-type specialist of Sinnoh, she represented not only her chosen type, but also the harsh, unyielding environment of her city. Snowpoint was defined by blizzards, frozen landscapes, and an atmosphere of isolation, and Candice's role reflected both the endurance required to thrive in such conditions and the energy needed to inspire others despite the cold. Her gym was one of the most distinctive puzzles in the series. Trainers navigated a massive frozen floor where sliding across tiles was the only way to progress. The challenge lay in breaking snowball barriers by carefully aligning movement paths, a mechanic that tested foresight and experimentation. This puzzle reflected the philosophy of ice slippery, unpredictable, and demanding of precision. By the time challengers reached Candice, they had already endured a trial that emphasized persistence and planning, qualities central to her identity as a leader. Her signature Pokemon in Diamond and Pearl was Abomasnow, a towering ice and grass type whose design merged the imagery of snowy mountains with coniferous forests. Abomasnow brought with it the weather effect of hail through its ability, summoning a storm that chipped away at opponents every turn. This ability tied Candice directly to her environment, reinforcing the idea that her battles were not just contests, but reflections of the blizzard-laden north. Facing Abomasnow forced players to contend with both raw power and the environment itself, making her team a thematic extension of Snowpoint's climate. Candice's personality set her apart from many other ice leaders. While Pryce embodied the stern wisdom of age, Candice was youthful, enthusiastic, and optimistic. She greeted challengers with warmth that contrasted sharply with the freezing setting of her gym. Her dialogue emphasized confidence, energy, and a refusal to be constrained by the cold. This juxtaposition of environment and personality made her memorable. She was the spark of warmth within a frozen city, proof that energy and optimism could thrive even in the harshest climates. In the anime, Candice was depicted with similar vibrancy. Episodes highlighted her playful energy, her bond with Abomasnow, and her competitive spirit. She was shown as both a capable battler and a friendly mentor, offering encouragement alongside challenges. This portrayal reinforced her role as more than just an obstacle. She was a symbol of positivity within an unforgiving environment. Her Japanese name, Suzuna, matches a traditional spring herb name, fitting the series' habit of using plant-themed names for ice and grass-adjacent characters. This naming choice subtly reinforced her identity as someone who thrived despite adversity. While many leaders were designed primarily around their type, Candice's very name connected her to broader cultural symbolism, deepening her role as a representative of her city and her environment. Her gym's location near Lake Acuity also tied her to Sinnoh's mythos. The lake was home to Uxie, one of the three lake guardians, connecting Snowpoint to the region's deepest lore. While Candice herself was not directly tied to the Guardian in the main storyline, her proximity to such a sacred site suggested that she was part of a city steeped in spiritual importance. Snowpoint Temple, with its mysterious sealed chamber where Regigiga slumbered, added another layer, placing Candice in a city at the intersection of myth, history, and icy endurance. Fan interpretations often highlight this connection, suggesting that Candice's optimism and strength mirrored the themes of the legendary beings surrounding her home. Some view her as a guardian in her own right, a representative of the living community near these sacred places. Others emphasize her role as a counterbalance to Snowpoint's isolation, someone whose positivity kept the city connected to the broader world. Her competitive presence was notable, thanks to Abomasnow's unique weather control. While hail teams were niche compared to sandstorm or rain strategies, Candice's use of Abomasnow gave the archetype cultural weight. Players remembered her battles as not only a clash against her team, but also a struggle against relentless hail damage, a reminder that the environment itself could be a weapon. The design of her gym emphasized spectacle as much as difficulty. The sliding puzzles forced players to think strategically about momentum, a mechanic rarely used elsewhere in the series. This choice reinforced the uniqueness of Candice's challenge, ensuring that her gym remained one of the most memorable in Sinnoh. It also reflected her philosophy. Success required not only strength, but also adaptability and foresight. Candice's cultural role extended beyond her gym. As one of the few female ice leaders, she carried on a legacy established by Lorelei in Kanto and Pryce in Johto, while also setting the stage for future leaders like Wulfric in Kalos. Her youthful energy and distinct personality ensured that she stood apart within this lineage, offering a fresh take on the archetype of the Ice Master. Her return in Platinum expanded her team and adjusted her strategies, reflecting the developers' efforts to rebalance the gym order and difficulty, yet her core identity remained unchanged, vibrant, optimistic, and tied to the icy north. Her continuity across generations emphasized her enduring role as a representative of Snowpoint and its culture. Fan discussions often note how Candice's optimism resonated with players who found joy in her contrast to the environment. In a city defined by cold, she became a beacon of warmth, someone who reminded challengers that resilience was not only about surviving, but also about thriving. Her personality suggested that even in frozen landscapes, energy and positivity could flourish, a lesson that carried meaning beyond the confines of the game. Candice's legacy lies in this balance of environment and personality. She stood as proof that leaders were not defined solely by type or difficulty, but by the philosophies they embodied. Her gym reflected endurance, her team tied to weather itself, and her dialogue reinforced joy and confidence. Together, these elements created a leader who was as inspiring as she was challenging. For those who faced her in the icy halls of Snowpoint, the memory was not just of sliding puzzles or hailstorms, but of encountering a leader who embodied warmth amid the cold. Volkner of Sunyshore City was unlike most gym leaders players had encountered across Sinnoh. His presence was defined not by exuberance or mystique, but by weariness, the quiet fatigue of a prodigy who had lost his spark. Known as the electric-type master, he embodied both the raw energy of his element and the consequences of burnout. His story offered players something rare in the series, a glimpse into what it meant for a powerful trainer to struggle not with others, but with himself. Sunyshore City mirrored Volkner's identity. Perched on the edge of Sinnoh, it was a place where land met sea, a mixture of natural beauty and technological ambition. Its walkways of solar panels gleamed with futuristic energy, symbolizing sustainability and innovation. Volkner, as the city's leader and architect, had designed much of its infrastructure. His engineering genius was evident in the solar panel pathways that powered the lighthouse and sustained the city. These accomplishments positioned him as not only a battler, but also a visionary builder whose impact reached beyond the gym. Yet, despite these achievements, his dialogue revealed disillusionment. Volkner admitted boredom, lamenting that challengers had failed to inspire him. His reputation as one of the strongest leaders in the region had left him isolated, starved for meaningful battles. This sense of ennui made his gym stand out as a narrative space not just of electricity, but of stagnation, where power had become dull in the absence of worthy rivals. His team in Diamond and Pearl featured Luxray as his ace, a sleek electric type whose design emphasized predatory sharpness and intensity. Luxray symbolized his own ferocity and potential, embodying the theme of piercing through darkness with vision and power. For many players, facing Luxray was both a mechanical and symbolic challenge, as it represented not just electric energy, but the clarity and strength Volkner had once embodied. Later iterations of his team introduced other electric types, but Luxray remained his cultural signature. The gym puzzle itself reflected his engineering brilliance. Players navigated rotating gears and platforms, aligning paths to progress. This design blended mechanical ingenuity with the flow of electricity, reinforcing both his role as a builder and his mastery of his type. The puzzle required careful observation and timing, qualities that mirrored his philosophy as an engineer. Progress demanded precision and foresight. Obscure trivia ties Volkner's personality to broader themes of Sinnoh. His disillusionment paralleled the region's focus on mythology and meaning, while legends like Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina embodied cosmic questions about time, space, and antimatter. Volkner embodied a more human struggle, the question of purpose. His fatigue suggested that even the most powerful trainers could falter without inspiration, grounding Sinnoh's grand mythology in a relatable, personal story. In the anime, Volkner's portrayal reflected this tension. Episodes showed him initially dismissive of challengers, his passion dulled by repetition. However, his battles reignited his spirit, with Ash's determination reminding him of the joy of competition. This narrative arc emphasized the theme of renewal, demonstrating how even burned-out prodigies could rediscover meaning through connection and challenge. His battle was depicted as a spectacle of electricity, reinforcing his status as a powerhouse when engaged fully. Fan interpretations often emphasize Volkner as a reflection of creative burnout. Players connected with his struggle, seeing in him the consequences of talent without challenge. Some interpreted him as a cautionary figure, a reminder that passion requires growth and inspiration to thrive. Others viewed him as a symbol of resilience, someone who, despite fatigue, remained committed to his city and his role. These interpretations highlight how his story transcended mechanics, making him one of the most relatable leaders in the series. Competitive implications of Luxray were limited, as its stats and move pool held it back from dominating in tournaments. Yet its association with Volkner elevated its cultural significance, ensuring that it remained one of the most recognizable electric types of Sinnoh. For fans, Luxray's piercing eyes and fierce demeanor became synonymous with Volkner's own intensity even in moments of fatigue. The cultural impact of Sunyshore City also reinforced his identity. Its reliance on solar power made it one of the most technologically advanced locations in the Pokemon world, positioning Volkner as both an innovator and a protector of progress. His dual role as gym leader and city architect blurred the line between trainer and engineer, expanding the scope of what leaders could represent. He was not confined to his arena. His influence extended across his community, shaping both its battles and its infrastructure. Fan discussions often highlight how Volkner's story arc provided a refreshing departure from the archetypes of leaders as static obstacles. His weariness, his engineering genius, and his search for meaning gave him depth, making him feel more human than many peers. Players remembered his gym not only for its puzzles or battles, but for the emotional context of facing a leader in search of renewal. His return in Platinum and later titles preserved these themes while refining his team and gym structure. His dialogue retained the undertones of fatigue, but leaned more toward his rediscovery of purpose, showing growth across versions. This continuity reinforced the idea that leaders could evolve not only in strategy, but also in narrative identity, deepening the sense of a living world. Volkner's legacy lies in this interplay of power and vulnerability. He represented the heights of strength and the lows of burnout, reminding players that mastery carried its own challenges. His gym was not just a trial of electricity, but a meditation on meaning, asking challengers to prove not only their strength, but also their ability to inspire for those who faced his Luxray under the flashing lights of Sunyshore. The memory endured as a lesson in both power and humanity.